Hey everybody, sorry having a little bit more technical difficulties here. Facebook is not treating us very well, so hopefully you can hear me. It looks like we have good audio. I'm going to try to get us posted to Kerncast right now. If you're looking for us on Kerncast, you're probably not finding us yet, so I'm going to try to see if I can figure out how to link this. Right now we're posting to a valid answer, and with Scott Marshall, this is the valid answer. You're going to have to do the spiel as I try to figure this out.
All right, folks. Well, while Scott wrangles with that, we got a couple things. First of all, tomorrow on A Valid Answer, we're going to have our first ever live guest. We're going to have Kelly Gafford Gladden, who recently lost her husband, quite tragically, unfortunately. She will be coming on to talk about that experience with us, and I expect it's going to be a difficult show emotionally. Certainly for me, as an atheist, it's going to be very difficult to listen to, and certainly, I empathize greatly, but as an atheist, I have certain views on the afterlife that are maybe a little less than common. And it's a show that I'm looking forward to doing and looking forward to hearing other people's perspective on that. It's one where I expect to be maybe doing a little more listening than speaking. But it's going to also be a technical challenge for us because it'll be the first time we have a third person on our show.
Now, this seems to be working.
Okay, so we are now on Kerncast.
Well, kind of. We're live on A Valid Answer page, and then it's shared on the Kerncast page. If you go to Kerncast, I don't think that it actually shows us other than a link to us right there.
There we are. There we are on Kerncast.
So this might be a new way of doing it in the future. Anyway, who knows?
Well, hey, why not simulcast?
Yeah.
Hit both of them. So there you go. So I am looking forward to hearing what Kelly has to share with us tomorrow.
Yes.
For those of you who regularly watch Kerncast, Kelly is a regular contributor on that channel, on that outlet. So
yes.
But tonight thank you,
Josh. He likes my shirt, Lucasfilm.
There you go. It is a cool shirt. But tonight, Scott and I are talking about something completely different. Tonight, we are talking about toxic masculinity.
Yes, and I'm gonna say something that's going to be very explosive right now. But then when I explain it, I think it'll make sense. But I don't believe in toxic masculinity, and I do believe that boys will be boys. Well,
okay.
But it's not what you mean. It's not what you think.
All right.
So just starting off, again, I'm about the meanings of words. For me, that's a big deal, especially when we get into certain debates. Just getting into debate in general, I believe in the meanings of words because if you can change the meaning of a word towards your favor, then you can change the entire dialogue of what everybody's saying, and you can put people on the defensive when they don't need to be. The best example of that is the use of the word assault weapon, which doesn't actually exist. It's just a scary looking gun that people don't like.
I knew he'd make it about guns somehow.
Right, but I'm just saying but then once you put a term into the lexicon or once you alter a definition of a word to mean something new and something different so that it sounds better for your argument, you are changing the definition of words. You are manipulating the people's minds. You are manipulating the language itself to further your own agenda and at the sacrifice of what is actually true.
Despite the fact that's naturally how language works and how people use language.
Really?
Period. Yeah, language changes over time. I mean, that's why people have a hard time following Shakespeare now, 500 years after the fact, or reading the original King James Bible in the original Old English because...
I'm sorry, the Bible was originally in Aramaic, Greek, and Hebrew, not originally in
I'm
King
talking
James.
About the King James Bible, though. The King James Bible was written in Elizabethan-era English. Actually, it's a little after the Elizabethan era, but it's still 17th century English. And people have a hard time sometimes understanding what's being conveyed because the language has changed.
But what you're talking about is the no longer using certain words. I'm talking about actually changing the meaning of a word.
But meanings of words change. Language is fluid. Language is fluid, whether you like it or not.
But the act of doing that to manipulate the argument is bad.
But people do it constantly and all the time.
People murder too. You're going to say that's okay?
No, because
so the fact that it's done doesn't mean it's okay. I don't want people to change the language to do that in a manipulative way. Just because it's done doesn't mean it should be acceptable. Just because it's done doesn't mean that it's good. Just because people do it doesn't mean that it's right.
But it's how language works, whether you like it or not.
Right. People murder other people. That's just the way it is, whether you like it or not. So we just live with it and that's fine. Or do we take
that's
steps?
That's what we've done since Cain and Abel.
Or do we take steps to try to prevent that from happening?
That's what we've done since
Should
Cain
we
and
not
Abel.
take steps to prevent that from happening?
Well, we create a dictionary, don't we?
Yes.
And we put definitions into the dictionary, but
Yes.
people do what they're going to want to do, and they use words the way they want to use them.
So if you're doing that, you're wrong.
Well, I don't know about that. You're being you. You're being a human being.
Right. Same thing. I mean, if you're going to murder, cheat, steal, lie, you're just being a human being. I mean,
that's what people do, right?
And that makes it right.
And you can, you're
that
not
makes it
going
right.
to stop
Sorry, it's all
any
relative.
of this stuff.
It's all relative.
Yes,
so lying is okay.
Again, it's all relative. I'll agree with you on that. And again,
no,
things
there's
are
right
subjective.
and wrong. There's right.
But
and
anyway, so that being said,
yeah. That being said, for me, definitions of words are important.
Okay.
Going on, the idea of the word toxic masculinity, I believe, is applying a negative term to something that is not negative. That masculinity is not toxic. Mm-hmm. That being a man by nature is not necessarily toxic. And masculinity itself is not something that is wrong. And saying and calling the problem toxic masculinity, I think is painting men in a bad light that is unfair.
I don't think anybody has an issue with the word masculinity.
Oh, yes, they do.
No, it's toxic masculinity. It's a term where you're combining two distinct words to create a new term to describe a problem that society has now essentially become conscious of.
Yep.
So the word masculinity, nobody's trying to change the meaning of the word masculinity, nor is the word masculinity inherently bad or wrong, or there's nothing wrong with masculinity, just like there's nothing wrong with femininity.
Is that the feeling that you guys are getting from this discussion? That the people who are making these commercials and the people who are coming out there about Me Too and all this, do you get the feeling that they're saying there's nothing wrong with masculinity? Do you really get the feeling that that's what they're saying?
Well, again, I think if you spend time reading what people actually have to say about the issue with the people in the news media and stuff, the commentators, the people who the editorials that are being written on this subject, they're talking about toxic masculinity, which is a specific type of masculinity.
I'm saying it's not a type of masculinity at all. That's the point I'm trying to make. That doing that is not masculine. Doing those things is not what makes someone a man. That's what I'm trying to say. By saying that is a form, though a toxic form of masculinity, I'm saying, no, that's not even a form of being a man.
How do you feel about patriarchy? What if we talked about this in terms of patriarchy? Are you okay with patriarchy?
What define patriarchy?
Okay,
so I know that we're talking about.
Patriarchy is the idea that men are somehow inherently superior to women and that men should occupy certain particular roles which are generally dominant over women. So here, patriarchy is a term used in feminism to describe the system of gender-based hierarchy in society, which assigns most power to men and assigns higher value to men, maleness, and masculine traits.
I don't believe that what the Bible says about masculinity and femininity is about value. Mm-hmm. I know that there are roles. Mm-hmm. There are roles to be, there's roles that can and cannot be done by certain genders. I cannot have a baby.
Okay.
That's just the role of motherhood cannot be played by me no matter what. That's just not physically. Well,
you could be a stay-at-home dad.
Yes, and that's not a problem.
You can take care of your kids.
But I'm just saying, literally, the role of having a baby, being pregnant, and giving birth is something I cannot do.
You can cook and clean, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. You can do all the things that pretty much women can do, with a few frank exceptions, which are defined by biology.
Right, and one of the things I think people don't take into account is biologically, psychologically, and biologically and physiologically, men and women are different. That literally there is a chemical that floods men's brains that separates the connective tissue between the left and right half of the brain, and for the most part,
dumb.
It does. Literally men are brain damaged. but I'm just saying, I mean that's a biological fact that happens that makes the way men think different than the way that women think in general. That there's different that even personalities are going to come and you're going to have there's going to be anomalies, but for the most part that's a physiological thing that physically happens in the brains that's different between men and women. That's nature. Our brains think differently. So in general, there are going to be roles that men can perform better simply because of physicality and physiological things that are happening. Same way that there are going to be roles that women perform better because of how their brain is made up, because of all those things. That there are different roles, but those roles do not define value. Again, as a Christian, I believe your value comes from the fact that Jesus Christ died on the cross for you. Doesn't matter what your skin color is, doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter anything, doesn't matter where you were born, what country you're in. Your value comes in the form that Jesus Christ died for you. Period. That's value. So as a Christian, all value is imparted by God unto people equally. But physiologically, because of how our bodies are different and what our bodies can do and how our brains think differently, there are different roles for men and women. That men are more suited for this role, women are more suited for that role. There may be a really strong woman who might be able to carry a 200-pound man up or down 3 flights of stairs and can be a firefighter. But in general, they can't. In general, a female firefighter, how many females can carry a 200-pound man on their back compared to how many males can carry a 200-pound man on their back? It's just physiologic. It's just biology that role is more suited for a man, but it's not exclusive. There could be anomalies and there could be if you can do it, then do it. I'm not saying, no, that's a man's role and you should never do it. No, if you can do it, then okay, there should be female police officers, female fire, whatever. It's just in the way the biology works out, it just doesn't happen equally.
So?
Right. So what? That's what I'm saying. I'm saying there's that the idea that there are roles that are better suited for men and roles that are better suited for women does not necessarily mean that's a patriarchy. Does not necessarily mean that there's greater value to one than the other. It simply means that there are different roles because of the different physical needs of the roles and the physical qualities of men and women. Is that unreasonable? Do
you believe that women should be paid less than men for the same work, or should they be paid the same?
Oh, they should be paid the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and is there any job that you're going to say?
As long as you're going to, let me finish, you asked me the question. If they can do the job the same, if you have to make concessions for one or the other, then those concessions should come with a difference in pay. But if there are no concessions, if they can do this exact thing and that exact thing, then no, I don't believe that there's a difference that should be.
Sure. Yeah, I'm offering these things ceteris paribus, which means all things being equal. So we just assume everything is equal. Okay, the only thing different is male versus female. So is there any job that you think should be restricted according to gender?
Job as in a paid job in the workforce, in the marketplace, or just like I said, mother and father? Right.
So we understand, for example, obviously nobody's here to say that we should let men have babies, that we should somehow, do some kind of strange surgery for men to have babies or anything like that, or vice versa. We're not talking about that. We're talking about just standard, can a woman be a CEO the same as a man? Can a woman be the general of an army the same as a man?
Yes.
So ultimately, you have no issue with a woman doing a job that is considered traditionally male or traditionally masculine as long as she can do the job. So you have no problem with a woman literally straight being a Navy SEAL if she passes
the training. If she can do it, I'll be awesome.
Okay, well there you go.
I'm just saying, we don't need to make concessions either way. We don't need to make concessions in this job so that a man can do this job. Mm-hmm. Well, if that man can't do the job like a woman can do the job, and this woman can do the job better, then hire the woman.
Right. We're not suggesting to lower the bar necessarily on what it takes to be, let's say, a Navy SEAL, right?
Exactly.
You're not going to have a special subset of standards because the mission isn't going to make exceptions based on gender.
Nope.
Therefore, all genders must be able to fulfill the mission. And so if you can, and I don't think there's a disagreement here.
Right. But I'm saying, I think there are people who are watching who would differ to say, Scott, how can you say that there are roles that women are not fit to do? That's just biology. And there may be exceptions, and that can happen. There should be no restriction. But you can't say, well, this field is predominantly 90% men, and how come it's only 10% women? Well, maybe that job just happens to fit better with the way men work, and that's why it's filled so many with men.
Or maybe we just have literally centuries of patriarchy enforcing a gender roles. When once we roll that back, we will see more equitability.
Possibly.
In the sexes filling the jobs. I mean, look at teaching, right? At one point, it was exclusively a male profession. And then at another point, it became a largely female profession. And today, it seems pretty much, I don't know what the numbers are, if it favors men or women. However, the higher up you go in an educational system's hierarchy, for example, you go to principal, you go to... what do they call it over the superintendents and all of that, and then you start seeing more male dominated field. You look at politics, for example, right? It's mostly still white men. And in fact, the Congress that we recently seated has more women in it than at any time in history, but they're still not half of our legislators.
I wonder if there's a way to be able to quantify that, or is there a way to be able to differentiate between whether or not this particular role happens to be filled by men because the physiology of men happen to fit that role better, or is that just because of mindset of patriarchy? Is there a way to find that out? I wonder if there's a way to test it.
For most things, particularly in the civilian world, it's going to be patriarchy. When you look at things like, the military, which is perhaps one of the last great bastions of patriarchy, men typically throughout history have always been used for military service. Part of the reason for that, though, is that if a man perishes, that's not such a great loss to society. Whereas if a woman perishes, that's literally the person who carries and bears the next generation.
On that, I always watch like apocalypse movies, like zombie apocalypse movies, or like the Terminator movies, where they always show these apocalypse movies where it's men and women fighting in war together. I'm like, if the human race is dying, why are you sending your only baby-making factories into war?
Well, there's logic there. However, women are capable of fulfilling most military roles, including active frontline combat. And
especially nowadays, when a lot of it's like robotic and like it doesn't matter who's doing it.
Well, and you look at, for example, a lot of communist and socialist societies, communism in particular, stresses the equality of women, and you have entire units made up of women. Going back, you go back to the Second World War, for example, the Soviet Union had several very famous women combatants. You had an entire squadron of light bomber pilots. They flew these little biplanes, dropped bombs on the Nazis at night. They were called the Night Witches. There was a whole squadron.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know. Great. Apparently, Josh Gunnarsson knows Adam Wentworth. Hey, guys.
And female snipers.
Oh, yeah.
So
here's the thing. Most of the time, women shoot better than men.
Well, regardless, it wasn't that, it wasn't because women somehow shoot better than men. I don't think it's just people qualified and they needed all hands on deck. Yeah. So if there was a woman who was capable of shooting straight just as well as her male counterparts, they put her into.
But what I'm saying is like literally, again, talking about physiology and that. This is more anecdotal, but in my experience and in things that I have seen and other things that have happened, typically a woman can usually shoot straighter than a man. Like there's something about the physiology. I think the testosterone starts pumping through us too much. But again, that might be something that physiologically might place women as being better than men simply because of physiology. I want to comment on something before it disappears from here. Josh is saying, I don't think Scott's view is toxic. Can we get a real misogynist in here? That's exactly my point, Josh. What I'm trying to say is like, I don't feel most of what people call misogyny is actually misogyny. That I think a lot of times what I'm saying, there are a lot of people who would still say I'm misogynistic and all that kind of stuff. But I'm trying to say, I think from a logical perspective, I think a lot of what people call misogyny is not actually misogyny. To say there are different roles for men and women is not misogynistic.
Okay, so you and I go out after the show, let's say, and we both order drinks, and you get, a beer. or whiskey or what have you, and I decide I'm going to get a strawberry daiquiri, you have an issue with that?
No, that's what I started off with.
Well, there you go.
Well, sorry.
Okay.
I started with virgin strawberry daiquiris because I didn't drink alcohol.
I think I did
for many
too when I
years.
was quite young.
But they taste so
they were
good. They're
delicious,
fruity.
right? Okay. But again, toxic masculinity is the type of masculinity that has an issue with that.
And again,
masculinity
I don't think
doesn't
that's
necessarily.
I don't think that's masculine at all. Let me get to what I was saying. The two things that I said. Right. I don't believe in the term toxic masculinity, and I believe that boys will be boys.
Okay. Now, what does that mean? I want to get into
that. Yes.
Okay.
Well, here's what I mean. Acting like toxic masculinity is actually acting like a boy. You're not being a man. You're still being a boy. If you're going to put down women and wolf whistle at them and bully people, you're not being a man. You're being a boy. Man up, be a man, and stop doing that crap.
Who's the liberal again? But whatever.
But that's what I'm saying. Boys will be boys. So let's train them to be men. And not let them continue to be big, not let them continue to be grown-up boys.
What does that mean to train them to be men? What do you mean by
When
that?
did we stop being gentlemen? A man is a protector. A man is a gentleman. A man is not going to put down a woman. A man is not going to bully other people. A man's going to stand up against bullies. That's what that's what I'm saying. That's what masculinity is. The acts that these people do, I don't want to, that's not a form of masculinity. That's a form of still being a boy. You're still picking on other people. You're acting like a little kid. You're pulling little girls, pigtails, whatever. You're still acting like a boy. If you're a grown up and doing those things, if you're a grown up adult male and doing those things, you're still just acting like a boy. Stop acting like a boy. Man up. Be a man. Learn to be a gentleman. That's what I'm talking about. When I watched that Gillette commercial, I finished watching the commercial. I'm all, well, when was it expected that men stopped being gentlemen? That wasn't anything of let's stand up and change. Let's get rid of toxic masculinity. That was literally like, none of those things was what a gentleman would do. Why don't you be a gentleman? Why don't you actually be a real man?
Are you okay with a woman filling those roles, doing those things?
Doing what things? What are you talking about?
I don't know. Maybe a woman wants to be chivalrous to her wife or girlfriend.
That's fine. Be a lady. Stop being a girl. Be a lady. Man up, lady up. So let's not change the definition of what it means to be a man or a lady. Let's recognize it for what it really is. If you're acting that way, if you're a woman and you're still gossiping and putting down other women to make yourself, you're just being a girl.
And men do the same thing.
You're right. But they're being boys. Stop being boys. Grow up. Be a lady. Be a man. That's what it means to be a man. That's what it means to be a lady. To put aside those childish things and stop being that way and be a responsible adult. That's why I don't want to change the definition of these things and say, well, that's a form of toxic masculinity. This is a form of good. That's not even being a man. That's being a boy. Stop being a boy and grow up. That's why for me, the definition of words is important. By calling that a form of masculinity is to denounce masculinity. To even say that that is a form of it is to put it down.
Well, there are bad forms of things, though, right? And there are forms of malbehavior that men typically engage in. The patriarchy is a thing; it exists. But everything that you said so far, once I have you explain it, you sound very much like a liberal. You don't sound very conservative today.
But I also sound like Christ.
So am I rubbing off? Well, Christ was, a socialist of color who gave people free health care. So, I get that. The more you sound like Christ, the more liberal you're going to sound to a lot of conservatives because a lot of people...
Because Christ was about love, not about... but not about condemning, but also not about condoning. It was...
He still had some rules.
It was still a sin in Jesus' eyes to be homosexual, even though he would still love the person.
Right.
That's what we're called to do. It's still a sin. But it doesn't mean you stop loving the person.
I think many liberals can appreciate that about Christians when they come across like that. I think they kind of understand it, even if they don't necessarily buy into it. The problem is conservatism has this hard edge where you have literally patriarchal, toxic men dictating, what people can do with their bodies, how people should be, trying to make laws and doing all these other things. And they don't sound very Christ-like as they go about it because they're not speaking from a position of love. They're speaking from a patriarchal position of power. They're trying to legislate what other people do with their bodies. They're trying to say that this is, because I have this belief, you are not allowed to do that. Instead of saying that because I have this belief, I'm not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do it either because of my belief, regardless of what you believe.
That's a human condition, though.
Yeah, and there are a lot of humans who do that. And in fact, there are also liberals.
All humans do that.
There are also liberals who engage in a certain measure of that kind of hypocrisy.
Yeah, I don't like guns, so if a conservative doesn't like guns, we don't own them. If a liberal doesn't like guns, they don't want you to own them.
Well, freedom means letting others do things you don't like.
You keep saying that, but you also keep saying all these things that people should not be allowed to do.
Like what?
You tell me.
No, you're the one making the accusation. So, burden of proof is on you. You're making the claim. But but basically, I think we kind of agree on the whole, the patriarchy bad. I think we agree on that. And I think we agree that there are unique gender roles that both men and women
That's the part that I don't think most people agree with, though.
But I think that's a narrow subset of roles, like literally having a baby and breastfeeding. Other than that, I'm kind of okay with, a man being the stay-at-home house husband. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And the woman being the breadwinner, I don't have an issue with that.
I don't have an issue with that either. What I'm getting at is when we see this particular job in society is mostly held by men, is that because it's patriarchy, or is that because that particular role just gets filled with men because men naturally perform that role? And I would love to find out if there's a way to make that separation, that it doesn't necessarily mean, well, if it's 90% male, then it must be unequal. It may not, it must be unjustly unequal.
But it's up to you to find out what those, I haven't, other than perhaps soldier, like frontline combatant, I really don't know. And frankly, even frontline combatant women throughout history have filled, that role with some degree of success. And so I really don't know that there are any jobs in existence today where 90% of it are men, because men are somehow better suited because they have a particular body part that women don't have.
I'm not talking about a body part. There's more different. There's more here again. You're making the assumption that only one body part separates men and women.
Well, there's multiple, actually. And, of course, the brain chemistry is slightly different.
Exactly.
But I don't know that it's significantly different.
Has anybody studied it?
I'm sure they have. But I'm not aware of a particular job that has come down and said this job is, so suited to men that only men can really do this job.
No. I'm not saying that only men can. Again, we're not making
only men should.
No, I'm not even saying should.
Well, then what are you saying?
I'm saying that it naturally falls that way. That it just simply naturally, here's a particular role that most men fill simply because most men think are built to do this kind of job, and they just naturally fill that role. Not that it's defined as a male role in society. No, it's just, here's this role and men just naturally gravitate to it. And here's this other role and women just naturally gravitate to it. Does that mean it's wrong if there's certain jobs that a certain gender naturally gravitates to that? Does that necessarily make it wrong? Does that necessarily make it unjust?
I think it's unjust if the division is purely patriarchal.
Yes.
If there is some sort of inherent biological thing there, For example, I don't know. I can't really think of a good example of a job, though, that's like that.
Correctional officer.
What about it? Women are correctional officers all the time.
Yes, they are. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they're not. I'm just saying that I believe the physiological brain of a man, that particular role is something that a man will gravitate to naturally because of just the way their mind thinks. But it doesn't mean that it's not possible. I'm just saying that as men, the natural urge inside of us to protect, to hunt, to do these things. I believe there are natural urges to do that.
Well, I don't know about correctional officer. There's a lot of women, including I have a friend.
No, and again, I'm not saying they can't. I'm not saying they shouldn't.
How about coal miner? I don't know of any female coal miners. People working, literally down in the mines. I haven't heard of a woman doing that particular gig. roughnecking or whatever it
Roughnecking,
is.
oil
in the
rigging, yeah.
oil fields. Not a whole lot of women in that field. There may be some, but I have never met or
Again,
heard
like
of
even
one.
construction, like it's dominant.
There are women in construction,
but it's dominantly
it is
dominantly male. And again, I think that's just physical.
I don't think there's a reason. I mean, I
And not a
imagine
reason.
a woman could go down in a mine and extract just as much ore as a man could.
It depends on how physical the job is.
It's very physical.
Then logically, obviously, on average, no. On average, men are this tall and have this much body mass. On average, women are this tall, have this much body mass. On average, a physical job like construction and mining and oil rigging is going to be male dominated simply because of physiology.
Well, I don't have an issue with that. The issue that I would have is someone erecting a a gender-based barrier.
Yeah, and that shouldn't happen.
A job.
That shouldn't happen. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about
we agree then.
Right, but what I'm talking about is the understanding that just because an industry or just because a particular job is dominated by a certain gender does not make that unjust that it's dominated by a certain gender.
Yes.
Not by definition.
Well,
not by strict definition. If you can prove that it's only because of a patriarchy, then the onus is upon you to prove that so that you can then say it is unjust.
You know, it's a great tragedy of history that for almost all of our human history, half of our populations, half of the human intellectual capacity in existence on this planet has been relegated to having children and doing dishes and cooking and cleaning and menial labor. When had we allowed merit to decide, regardless of gender, who contributes the most to society? I mean, who knows? We could have colonized the stars by now, for all we know. But instead, we've been literally running as a civilization on half of our brain power, because up until only the past few decades have we really opened up and allowed women to become leaders and take active roles in many industries. And patriarchy is still the dominant form of culture in most societies around the world. In the United States and the Western world, we've made more progress, but we still aren't there. We still pay women less than men. We still shame men who want to fulfill jobs that are more traditionally left to women, historically. And
if you're doing that, you're not a man, you're a boy.
Well,
if you're doing that, you're not a lady, you're a girl.
Yeah, well, there you go. So
stop trying to steal the definition of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a lady, and stop trying to hijack that. You're still being a boy or a girl.
Okay. So I think our only real difference here, Scott, is semantic. I don't think we differ in practice.
Important. Semantics are so important. Definitions of words.
It's more important to you than to me, whereas I think it's okay to coin a new term, toxic masculinity, and use that particular term to frame it. I don't think we have to go around calling people boys and girls. Yes. I think we just say toxic masculinity is what it is.
But it just dilutes the definition of what masculinity is.
Language changes naturally, Scott. I'm sorry.
But it doesn't have to. A lot of things happen naturally that shouldn't. So
should we not? It's called the human condition.
Should we not fight against the bad? Should we not fight against the bad?
Sure, we
Why
do.
are you giving up on this one? Why have you given up on fighting this? Why have you given up on fighting for what's right in this particular circumstance?
Frederick the Great once put it, "He who defends everything defends nothing." This is not a hill I care to die upon. I am not going to stand underneath the avalanche of human nature and try to hold back all the boulders. I'm just going to get swept away. There's no point to that. If I'm going to fight a battle, it's going to be a battle that I have a chance of winning. You're not wrong. You're right to say, no, stop the boulders, but guess who's going to win? The boulder. Sorry.
I'm not trying to make this. I'm not trying to make this sound as bad as it's going to sound. I'm sorry, but this is okay.
Go ahead, hit me with it.
This has happened many times in our conversation. Is there anything you're worth standing up for? Because you seem to constantly say, nope, I'm not going to fight that hill. Nope, I'm going to adapt, as you said. I'm going to get on the winning side. Is there anything in which you're not spineless?
Oh wow, that does sound awful.
Sorry, but I'm just like.
Wow.
That happens a lot in our discussions, and I'm like, do you stand up for anything?
There are certain issues that I'm very passionate about, others perhaps less so. When it comes to equality, justice, politically, I'm frankly, I'm a socialist. So when it comes to those kinds of issues, you're going to find me starting an argument. You're going to find me going more toe-to-toe and standing my ground. But on other issues, such as, again, human nature being what it is, no, I'm going to pick my battles. I'm going to fight the battle of Thermopylae, not, this big battle on an open plain where I'm going to get enveloped and surrounded by my enemies. Mm-hmm. I'm going to fight in a narrow pass where I can actually defend and make the most value of my contributions. So if that is spineless, well, but it's a valid strategy, and it prevents me from becoming exhausted as a human being and as a debater. I don't become exhausted because I'm not fighting every single battle that's out there. Imagine if you're a firefighter and you're fighting every fire across the city, you're going to quickly become exhausted. But if you concentrate just on your own neighborhood and keeping your own neighborhood safe, that you can do, and you'll be very effective at it. So that's kind of my response to that.
Okay. I believe in principles, and I believe that if it's a principle and if it's right and wrong, it's worth standing up for, even if you're going to lose. Even if you're going to lose, it's worth standing up for. Again, now part of that is I believe that's what it means to be a man and what it means to be a lady. That's what it means to be an adult, is to stand up for what's right, whether it's comfortable or not. Whether you think you're going to win or not, you stand up for principles and you stand up for what's right.
There's a time and a place to stand your ground and to die on a hill. But for me, when it comes to language and humans doing what they naturally do to language, that is not a hill I care to die upon, quite literally.
It's the basis of all discussion. And if you can stand that, you can course correct. I mean, you can...
If you could win, I'd join you.
Yeah.
I'd join you if you could win, but you can't win.
That's so honorable. I would join you if I thought you'd win.
Well, yeah, that's how alliances work.
That's not honorable.
That's how
it's not honorable.
Yeah. No, I mean...
Honorable is I'll stand with you if it's right. If it's the right thing to do, I'll stand with you.
But to me, I don't necessarily agree that it's right to stand against human nature. But I think we digress. So we're just going to, we're going to disagree on this, but we digress.
Greed is human nature. Capitalism is human nature. And yet you stand up against those with no problem.
No, it's not human nature.
Yes, it is.
I think it's a perversion.
Greed and capitalism is human nature. That's why it works. Because that's why it lasts so long, is because it's based on human nature. The human nature of being greedy and looking for yourself and getting as much as you can for your benefit and putting out as little as possible.
No, I don't think that's human nature at all.
That's animal nature. That's nature across nature.
No. So, I disagree with that, Scott. I think humans are naturally social and cooperative and constructive. And I don't think that
we had that discussion
greedy, we've several episodes.
10 shows ago or something like that. You guys got to look it up because we literally talked about the human nature.
Human nature, yeah. We need to label our shows, by the way, so people can go back. Are they still labeled?
When you go to YouTube and on the podcast, they're all labeled. The podcast and YouTube are all labeled by, actually, even the ones on Facebook actually have, it says Scott and Marshall discussed this, and it says a valid answer, and it says whatever the title was that we were talking about. So it should be searchable.
So Michael Angelo Loncello, I'm imagining, but he says capitalism is human nature. And so I think certain aspects of capitalism are human nature, but also you can say the same about socialism. Certain aspects of socialism are also human nature. So it's kind of my response to that. He says capitalism here works without cooperation, and I think he's largely correct, but it's also very destructive. Capitalism is inherently destructive over the long term. Well, but I think it's more natural for us to work together in cooperative units to build, construct, and create. That's just,
it's possibly more beneficial, but I don't think it's more natural. I think by nature, we're destructive. Human beings and human beings are destructive in nature, and it's out of the ordinary that we build something amazing.
Well, I think maybe we need to
He was being sarcastic, apparently.
Well, I think maybe this here needs to be a future topic then for us.
And a past topic.
Well, we might have to approach it a little differently.
Yeah.
You know.
So I know I shocked you when I said I don't believe in toxic masculinity and boys will be boys, but that is the firm basis. If you listen to this, I believe that masculinity means to stop acting like a boy. Being a lady means to stop acting like a little girl. It means to grow up, be an actual adult, be responsible for your actions, be a person who builds up, do the right thing. That's what it means to be an adult. That's what it means to be a gentleman. That's what it means to be a lady. Do the right thing. That's not selfish. Go against your selfish nature. Be a good person. Be an adult. Don't do those things that little children do. Be better than that. Boys will be boys, so let's start training these boys to be real men.
So you're not going to condone what I call toxic masculinity and what you call being a boy.
No.
You don't condone any of that kind of sexist behavior,
no.
gender biased behavior.
No.
You don't condone
I
any of
just
that.
don't want any of that behavior to be defined as being masculine because
Well, it's toxic masculinity to be fair, but
yeah,
all right.
I don't want it to be. It's not being an adult male. It's still being a boy.
Yeah. Okay.
Which I guess masculinity could still be defined as boyhood, but I define it as being an adult.
But we do want to encourage, set a good example. Remember, kids model their parents. So,
Yep.
Hey, gentlemen, open the doors for the ladies and be chivalrous, but also ladies, it's okay for you to do the same. And,
If I'm walking up and a lady holds the door open for me, thank you. That was nice.
Yeah, you say thank you.
Yeah.
It's not like, a put down or an insult. It's great. It's people being polite. And I think we all do better.
Because here's the thing. I'll hold a door open for a man too.
Mm-hmm. You've done it many times. Yep.
So,
it's just called being polite.
yes, being a gentleman. So that's why I said when I saw that Gillette commercial, I think it's a great commercial. I think it's amazing. Yes, because the next generation of men are watching us right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, I'm just like saying, then be a real man. When did we stop being gentlemen? Let's go back to being gentlemen.
Well, I like the idea of chivalry. I just don't like the idea of the patriarchy that typically has gone with it in the past. But I think we can have gender-neutral chivalry, and all will be well.
All right, sounds good. This has been a valid answer with Scott and Marshall. Sorry for the little technical difficulties at the beginning. Seemed to work well. We have a lot of people who might do this way from now on and have it posted there. So, hey, we're on at 5 o'clock on Sundays, 4 o'clock on Mondays. Tomorrow we're going to have a guest with us. Kelly Gladden. Gifford Gladden is going to be with us tomorrow. And so join us for that again, 4 o'clock tomorrow. Until next time, this has been a valid answer. Scott and Marshall. God bless you guys.
Start boxing you. Toxic masculinity.